Ministries. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're glad to have you all. We're continuing our series in Walking into Your Destiny, and we're talking about several women in the Bible who have been catapulted into their destiny. Last week we talked about Rahab in the book of Joshua from chapter 2 verses 1. Rahab was a harlot who was catapulted into her destiny because she believed in the God of Abraham and the God of Moses. This week we're going to be talking about another character from the Bible. I want to introduce to you Abigail. She's not a very well-known character in which we talk about very often. She's not mentioned as often as Sarah or even Rahab in some cases. Most of the time we hear of our sisters Ruth and Esther. But Abigail had a specific ministry. She was the wife of Nabal, a very wealthy man. Abigail was an ordinary woman, an ordinary wife. She attended to the duties of her regular day. Abigail's story begins during the time of David, when David was being chased by Saul. David continued to move throughout the land, hiding from Saul. He did not want to go into battle with Saul at that particular moment, although God would deliver Saul into his hands. What he did find out was about what God had for his life through the messenger that God would use, Abigail. David came into the land in where Abigail lived with her husband Nabal, and he sought to get rest and food just like he had in every other land. He comes unto this land and he sees these servants, and he says to his men, go into the land, this is Nabal's land, and ask him to send us some water and some food and some drink, for it is David that has asked him of this. So the men obey, and they go into the land, and they come upon the sheep shearer who's taking care of his land and his sheep, and he has his wine, and he has his food and his wheat and all the things that he needs in order to take care of his life, all the necessities of his life, and of course a little extra. The servants of David go onto the land, and they run into Nabal, and they say, how are you doing, sir? We would like to ask you for some food and drink for David, the man who is on the battlefield for God. Nabal responds quickly with, who is this man David whom I should just give all of my labor unto? They asked him, they said, well, what we wanted was just a portion, just so that we can get through the night and continue to move through the land. Well, Nabal dismisses them and tells them to go back to this man and say, look, I do not know you. I do not, nor do I care for you. I know about Saul. I know about some of your situation, but why should I give you some of the things that I have just to give to some man? So they return with this message back to David, who becomes angered by the fact that this man would discount them so quickly. But in the midst of all of that comes Abigail, the wife of Nabal. Nabal was her husband. Everyone in the land knew that he was mean. He was a nasty character. But his wife, being as gentle as she was, continued to be his defender, because she was his wife. She was his intercessor. She was used to going about her day making excuses for her husband, constantly apologizing for the things and the words that he would say. He would do things to offend others. He would say things to offend other people. So she made it her business to go about town making excuses for her husband. Nabal continued to do the things that he normally does throughout his day. He carried on about his day, eating and feasting on what he had harvested in. But Abigail heard about what her husband had done to offend the future king of Israel. So she set out to help get David on his way. She began to get some wheat, some food, some drinks, some wine, whatever would be the necessities of the day, and even gathering a few little extras for David. She packed them up in a neat little box. She picked those things up and placed them on her camel. She goes out seeking out after David. When she finds David and his men preparing to go after Nabal, her husband. When she comes up on him, she says, I have heard what my husband has done. I heard of the offense that he has given unto you, and I apologize on behalf of my husband. David is stunned by the presence of this woman, gentle in character, powerful in nature. But as she gives him, she says, please take this offering and even more for the sake of my husband's offense. David is angered and he says to her, no, I shall go and defend myself, and I will remind him of who I am so that this will never happen again. Because by morning light, none of your sons and the sons of Nabal will be alive. But Abigail thought in her mind and in her heart to begin to walk and to get there and to pack and be ready to intercede for her husband, to intercede for her sons, to intercede for her household. Abigail met with David. She fed him, she clothed him, she gave them things to drink, she may help them to rest. She began to minister unto David, who sought to kill her own husband. She said, I know that he is a nasty man. I know that he is not a nice man at all. But I ask you, man of God, I ask you to spare his life. David took into consideration some of the words that she said. But then he began to fester again and became angered at the thought of Nabal telling him no. So he thought in his mind to go ahead with a plan to wipe out Nabal. But Abigail began to speak into his spirit. She spoke into his heart. She said to him, listen, David, man of God, you are a soldier for the Lord Almighty, the King of Kings. He knows your situation. He understands what you're going through. He even allows you to be upset and angry. But I ask you, why put the blood on your hand of innocence when God will be your avenger, as he has been throughout this whole process of your life? Why shed innocent blood and have it on your head when God will avenge you? Now I ask you this. We have to understand in our life that God is our avenger. It is not our duty nor our responsibility to take revenge on those whom are around us. For God says, if you stand for what is right, then who can stand against you? Because God is on your side. When God becomes your protector, when God becomes your avenger, and you give those situations unto God, he will avenge you regardless of your situation. You cannot seek to revenge someone for a death or something they've done wrong to you. You have to turn that over to God. God says, I will avenge you.